First of all, I want to commend all of you for being enrolled at Southwestern. It is an institution that I love very much. My undergraduate is in church music, which is what we called it back in the day at Oklahoma Baptist University. And then I went to Southwestern for a master's, later to LSU for a doctorate in choral music and music history. But my days at Southwestern were some of my finest times alone and with group with God. And so you're in a great place. And I want to say, number two, I am highly energized and very excited over what I see coming out of Southwestern during these days. If I could have been at Gambrel Street last night, I would have been there for the Southwestern Seminary Southwestern Singers presentation. I was a Southwestern singer. My wife was as well. So I commend you. So my assignment is to talk to you about what I do week in, week out. We have two worship paradigms at West University Baptist Church. The 8:30 service is what they called classic before I got here. So I'm keeping that moniker, but it is basically traditional in that we use organ, piano, choir, orchestra. We sing hymns and we sing modern songs as well. We do not have a rhythm section right now, but it is my desire to have a rhythm section that plays with us on a weekly basis. I'm just looking for the right people. And I hope that you just took that down. I'm looking for the right people. Getting the right people to help you on the platform is of absolute paramount importance. You get the wrong musicians up there and you've got more problems than you had before they were on the platform with you.
Amen.
You want people who have a heart that is a heart hot for God, whose hearts are made tender by the scriptures and by a sense of humility, but you do want the best musicians. It is very frequent that those two do not exist in the same person. You get a humble person who doesn't play very well. You get an outstanding musician who is beyond arrogant, and you can't use either one because one doesn't have the skills you need, and the other one is just not in a heart position for you to move forward with the Lord's work. Our second paradigm is contemporary. That's 11 o'clock. While I oversee that service, I do not directly lead that service, nor do I plan that service. Jeff is a very successful businessman, but he does this for us, and I'm very grateful for Jeff's leadership. So our 8:30 service, which is the one that I lead, this is what I do on a weekly basis, just to help you all see. Sunday morning, we have our worship service, and then as I walk away from that service into Sunday afternoon, if I don't have other responsibilities, I'm starting to put things that have been in place on the planning docket for several weeks, but I'm starting to put them in real place so that my admin assistant and our musicians all have all the things that they need by the time we get together for rehearsals. The first thing will be a rehearsal lineup for Wednesday, which is a choir. When I came here, we had about 16 in the choir. Last Sunday, we had 51. Now, that sounds like a pretty good sized choir, but when you consider only 250 or so people were in the room,
That's
51 people, that's over 20% of the congregation that were up on the platform. And that's just choir. You add to that orchestra, we had 70 musicians on the platform Sunday. So God is doing great things, bringing really good and eager musicians to join me to help lead worship. So we get the rehearsal plan. I send that to my admin assistant, and then our librarians go to work because they put all of the music in order before Wednesday night so that when our choir members get here, whether they be 40 in number or 55 in number, everything is in order for them. We don't use pads. We don't use any devices like these to get our music. They do at 11 o'clock contemporary, but we don't in our traditional service. We still use octavos and hymn sheets, though everything is on a screen. So they have to put that all in order. We have a librarian upstairs right now who's working on that. Later today, another librarian will put our orchestra folders together for us for Sunday. So then worship planning. My worship planning starts with this book right here. It always starts with this book. And it starts with reading the pastor's text. Whatever he is going to preach the following Sunday, I go to that text and I read that first. I read it for two reasons primarily. One, to make certain that I am absorbing what I can from scriptures, because I don't get his outline, and I don't even get a time alone with our pastor, which I've had in the past. With each pastor I've served, this is an exception. And there's a reason for that. It has to do with the city rise paradigm. It's a very busy place, and our pastors move around a lot and preach in all three of our different locations. But I'll read his texts or texts first, may read them several times just to be familiar with what it is he might say. And then it also is an opportunity for God's word to speak to me. Then I go usually to my resources, one of which is this book. It's Baptist Hymnal 2008. That's what we use here. They bought it before I got here. And there are times when I may go through this entire book page by page every week, just searching for the best songs for that week, either ones that are going to be paired well with the pastor's scripture for the coming Sunday, or ones that I believe that we should sing. I also have a running list of more modern songs that I infuse into our worship. That was not generally practiced until my wife and I joined this team in 2020. But I get as many modern songs as I can before our congregation. This Sunday, we're singing By Faith. And last Sunday, I can't remember what modern song we may have sung, but usually it's a song or two that is something that's not in the songbook, not in the hymnal. So those are my two main sources, but I make up that list that is in one of my files on my laptop. I make up that list from various sources. One, I follow a lot of people, just like you all do. I go down the YouTube trap, just like you all do, and I find some really good songs. But I also have a bucket full, I would say handful, but it's probably larger than a handful, because over the past 20 years, as music worship has been evolving, I've added people to that list. And here's who these people are. They are people who know my heart with regard to worship. They also know that I consider modern song. By the way, I'm a missionary kid. I grew up on the mission field. So when people say, well, we started doing this and this, no, we were doing it in the 70s in Colombia, where we were with guitars and tambourines and drums and so forth. So I go to my heart language as well as to my head language for song selection. But those people periodically will send me a song. Hey, Dr. Major. Hey, Dad. Yes, my son, my daughter. They are both worship leaders in their own right. I think you should consider this song. Years ago, my son said, Dad, stop whatever you're doing. Listen to Shane and Shane sing Surely Goodness, Surely Mercy. And I did. And I sat at my desk in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I wept. It was so beautiful. It was such a lovely setting of hundreds, perhaps thousands of Psalm 23, but it was a worthy setting that has served congregations that I have led very well. Another time, my daughter sent me a song, and I thought, sweetheart, that's pushing it way too far for this particular congregation. Then I got another text from another brother. Hey, you need to consider this song. Same song. No, I think it's too much for our congregation. I traveled to another state. A brother picked me up, and he said, what are we going to do tomorrow? It's Sunday. I said, I have a Sunday off. You know exactly what Paul wants to do. I want to go to every worship service I possibly can in 5 hours tomorrow. So we did. We landed in his church, and they sang that song. And I said, I get it, God. We're going to sing this song at our church in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we did. Is it their favorite song? I don't know. But that's how I collect those that go on that list. I evaluate those songs for poetry, singability, familiarity with our congregation, but I also want to introduce new songs to them. But I want to go through, as I said, I sift through those very carefully. Now, you all sit at a time when you have a far more challenging job than perhaps Dr. Brown did when he started his journey, certainly when I did, because I'm the old guy in this group, it looks like. Back in the day, you had a hymnal. That was it. You didn't have all the songs, and you certainly didn't have internet or YouTube and all these. You just had a hymnal. That was your repository. Now you and I need to be good theologians. We need to be studied persons of the English language or whatever language it is that we use in our congregation, Spanish, Korean, Chinese, whatever language it is. We need to be good. We need to be experts in that field so that when we put poetry before our congregations, we're putting poetry that is actually thoughtful. There's a lot of songs that are out there that are not good poetry, and I won't list them. You all sing them, and you may sing some of them, which we do here too. But you just need to be very careful. So you need to be good theologians, good musicians, and then I think persons who know your own language very well. And then I program those very carefully. And then I send the order of service off usually on a Tuesday afternoon or maybe Wednesday. And I usually call it my first pass, which means hold this loosely. Organist, pianist, orchestra, band, whoever they are, choir, librarians, pastors. I may make changes tomorrow. And frequently I do the next day. By the time it gets before the choir on Wednesday night, I know where we're going. Our rehearsal process begins with Sunday's music. I do all of Sunday's music every Wednesday night. That is my warm-up. I don't do vocalises, never have. My major professor at LSU, Ken Fulton, did not do them when the LSU a cappella choir got together. He just said, come to this room warmed up. I expect your voices to be warmed up, ready to sing. But we use our songs, psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs that we're going to sing for the following Sunday. We use those as our warm-up, both spiritual and group dynamic, and also, of course, musical. And then we start rehearsing our anthems. Right now, we have between 6 and 8 anthems in our lineup every Wednesday. We rehearse for 90 minutes. I am very good about starting on time, and I'm almost as good about ending on time. Mm-hmm. And I only say that because we usually go over a minute or 2 or 5, because at the end of rehearsal, we take prayer requests, and sometimes those get a little bit protracted, which is certainly fine with us all. By the time we get to Wednesday, we know where we're going. We're not going to change anything unless something just totally bombed the night before. And then we press forward with it. On Sundays, I rehearse the orchestra at 7:30. We'll have anywhere from 18 to 24 players on our platform. And then the choir meets at 8 o'clock. And we run Sundays all of, again, worship music plus the anthem, as we are putting people into rows. Last Sunday, we had to add chairs to the choir room and to the choir loft because we spilled over in our growth, and we run the service. So that's kind of my week's process of worship for the 8:30 service. And that's generally what I do. Obviously, there are aberrations to that, but that is generally what I do.
Just because I'm curious, tell me what the do you have a special worship planning meeting or time that you're meeting with your senior pastor, preaching pastor for the week?
It's a very good question, Dr. Brown. Every pastor I have served with, I had that. Dwayne Brooks at Tallowood was one of my favorite hours of the week. Dwayne and I would sit down and I'd say, preacher, what you going to say Sunday? And he'd pull out his Bible and he'd just go through his sermon. No notes. He would just go through his scripture. And I loved that. I would make little notes. Chuck Swindoll, he and I met, and I would do the same thing with Chuck, but I knew where Chuck was going. He was in the book of Romans when we served with him at Stonebriar. Jim Bachman at Covenant Presbyterian Church, I would get some time one-on-one with him. Wade Bibb in Knoxville, the same thing here. I don't get any time with our senior pastor during the week to talk through the worship service. So I have to glean from his scripture texts that he has put in our message matrix and any notes that he may have listed. But to be quite honest with you, fellow pilgrims on the way, I miss that hour that I used to have in every church. And I'm now in my 44th year in music worship ministry. I've had that almost every week until I came to this church. So you just pick it up and you just try to make it happen. My own team consists of the people that I have mentioned, including my admin assistant, our pianist, organist, and I meet at 6 o'clock before the choir comes in on Wednesday. We run through all of Sunday's music. They know what they can expect. So there's my answer to that.
Do you use Planning Center?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
And what sort of meetings might you have during the week with any sort of tech people that would create your screens or deal with live sound reinforcement or live stream?
So when I came to this church, it was COVID time. Like many churches, they learned how to get themselves up online within a few weeks in March of 2020. Now, what, 4 years ago was that? Yep. So one of the first things that I introduced to the church was we need to hire a director of media and communications, because at that point we had some very disparate people, none of whom were led by a team leader. We hired someone a year ago, but he oversees all three of our campuses. We don't have a designated team leader here. So the person who's our point, they get planning center, they pick up the pieces. What we do, Dr. Brown, we get into Sunday morning at 7:30 and they start running through the slides. My admin assistant has already put together the slides. She knows now where we are with regard to whatever song. If it's a new one, she'll say, okay, verse, chorus, what are we going to do? Where's the bridge, etc. But the media folk, we basically run through it on Sunday. By contrast, the band rehearses in the sanctuary on Wednesday nights from 8:15 to about 9:30. They have media personnel in the sanctuary because obviously a band is it's much more media intensive than more traditional idioms are.
With it. But I grew up primarily in a contemporary setting. My parents, the church they took me to when I was younger, we always sang praise choruses and from Maranatha Praise. I remember those from being young, and that's where I started, and that's kind of the lane I've stayed in kind of my entire time, like learning music. And so, which is really interesting for me, when I started working full-time at churches, I started getting lots of requests for hymns. I didn't grow up with hymns, which is, I had to learn a lot of those on the way. Even over the last 10, 12 years, those are things I've had to pick up along the way. But you learn and adjust. And I think one of the things that as I was kind of walking through my week, I think one of the things I wanted to lead with, when you are in full-time ministry, flexibility is everything. I'm all about preparation. I'm a very prepared person. My first full-time job like when I was 25 or so, took a job at a church. And the thing I kept hearing was creatives are flaky and disorganized and all the things that go along with that. And that's not my personality, but I kind of made a point to go, I'm going to be very organized and structured in my week. And as a younger Philip would have been very flustered if you messed up my week or tweaked my set or whatever I needed to do along the way. But as I've grown in that, learned that flexibility is everything, and you have to be willing to kind of pivot at any moment and make adjustments along the way. But I'll show you, just kind of talk you through kind of what my week looked like. And I'm going to start on what our Monday meeting looks like and then walk through till Sunday. But we start every Monday morning. We have a creative team at our church, which consists of myself, my music director. We have a creative director, tech director, communications director, our videographer, and then our senior pastor is a part of our creative meeting every Monday morning. We come in on Monday mornings. We have a Google document that we have set up every week that after Sunday service, we go in on either Sunday evening or Monday morning, and we go in and mark what went good, what went bad, what was confusing. And we make notes in our document before our meeting. So when we walk into our creative meeting on Monday, there's already notes in. There's places on the notes for response, for if you need to respond to somebody's critique about whatever happened in the service. But in that meeting on Monday, we walk through, we look at Sunday, we look at all the good, the bad, and the ugly of what happened on Sunday morning. And can I just be honest, like sometimes those notes are hard. When somebody critiques something that you were really proud of, and then you walk in and go, man, that didn't land like I was hoping it would. But you put those things in, and just being flexible to adjust to whatever the critique is from your pastor. Like like Paul said, I've had pretty much at every church I've worked at, I've had an opportunity to sit with the senior pastor to talk about what Sunday is going to look like. And our Monday meeting is my hour that I get to sit with him. It's in a group setting, but we get to talk through what Sunday is going to look like and his critique and things from the previous day. But we start our Monday and we talk through the previous Sunday. And then after we talk through previous Sunday, any kind of adjustments that we need to make, we look at the upcoming Sunday, what's coming this week. Typically on a Monday morning, I have songs in. I have songs. We live and die by Planning Center. Our service flow, everything, our chord charts, anything you need is in Planning Center, and our volunteers all know that. But in our Planning Center flow, we have the breakdown of the songs. We have who's singing the song, as the person is assigned to each one. And then in each song, to help our production team, we go in and we put a sequence breakdown of the song as well, so they can be prepping slides and things for the week. But we look at our service flow for that week. We talk to our pastor, and a lot of times the way our pastor operates, he's got a fairly good outline of where he's going that week, but it's not always set in stone. So we have an idea of where he's going. Some weeks he comes in on a Monday, he knows exactly what he needs for Sunday, and he'll go, hey, the sermon is going to land here. We need a response song for this moment. And so that's one of those moments where you just kind of pivot and adjust, and you go, do you have a song in mind? I work with a pastor who's very musical. I learned he has perfect pitch, which is intimidating a little bit. Ooh. Yeah. Great vocal. He's got a great voice, plays keys very well. But anyway, he usually has a good idea. If he needs a response for something, he has a good idea of what he wants and where he needs that to go. So I always glean in on whatever he's looking for in that moment, and you make adjustments. If you have a song that you really feel like was going to land that week and you got to scratch it, you scratch it and you just adjust and go. But we look at that week, how the flow of service is going to go. We do everything from song flow, where we need to put the welcome, where we need to put announcements, where we need to put where the host is going to come up and do. And sometimes those things change week to week, and we kind of mix that up. But we talk through every little detail of service flow so that when we walk out of that meeting, we know for Sunday, this is exactly what's going to happen. After we talk through this coming Sunday, we tend to look 2 to 3 weeks out in that same meeting. And it's mostly from that perspective, it's a bird's eye view of 2 to 3 weeks out. Is there something coming that we need to know about? A lot of times is there a baptism in the service? Is there a mission commissioning coming up? Are we pushing community groups? How are all those things that go out? And we just kind of get it on our radar. So when we come in the next week, it's not catching anybody by surprise. So we know what that's going to look like. The majority of the rest of our Mondays, at least at my campus, we call those meeting Mondays. I mean, there's not a whole lot of, outside of our creative team meeting, everything else, we have staff prayer. And then I have brief meetings at the end of the day with my music director. And then with my music director and I also we help out with youth and college worship, which happen midweek, and we meet briefly with them. But when we come into Tuesdays, I usually start Tuesday mornings with my music director. We talk through what that service flow is going to look like. So we use Ableton, we use multi-tracks in everything that we do. And so me and my music director talk very detailed about how we want song breakdowns, where are we going to cut stuff, because we only have so much time on a Sunday and we can't always do a 9-minute Hillsong or Bethel, or, some of those are very lengthy. So we have to make a lot of cuts in some of the tracks and make sure that is good. So my music director and we talk through that on Tuesday mornings so he can get to work on building tracks. So the way my weeks are usually broken out, Mondays are usually obligated by meetings. Wednesdays, which I'll get to in a second, are typically like rehearsal days. So my Tuesdays and Thursdays have a little more flexibility. We use Tuesdays. Like I said, we talk through tracks. Tuesdays, we have college ministry, which we also build tracks and do stuff for them. So we help them out. We have meetings with the college pastor and that team to make sure that they're good and set to go for that evening. But typically what my planning looks like, everything for my team is planned 6 weeks out. On the 15th of every month, I look and go, what do the next 6 weeks look like? We get the next month's plan. We get the next month's, all the planning center requests, all that stuff goes out on the 15th of the month. So usually a lot of times that falls on a Tuesday or Thursday. We look at that And I want to reiterate what Paul said about starting in the Word of God. Man, when we plan, I plan song sets 6 weeks out. But all of that starts in the secret place with the Lord. All of that starts in the Bible, like being in the Word. And one of the things that we do, we're pretty particular about songs that we introduce. When I look 6 weeks out, I go, how can we introduce a song? Where are we going to introduce a song in the service? Where is it going to fit with where the pastor is going in the next 6 weeks? But we're also pretty like, we look at the song and we go, we always start with, is this song scriptural? Is there anywhere in this song that I look at and I go, would I feed this? The Lord challenged me on this a few years ago. It's like, I've got 20 minutes with 1,000 people on a Sunday morning. What are you leaving them with? And if I'm leaving them with a bunch of songs that really aren't that scripturally accurate, man, I have missed the mark. And so we start and we kind of go through every song and look at, is this scripturally accurate? Where are we getting it? If it's not, even if it has a question, we'll shelf it and go like, it's not worth putting in front of our people if it's not scripturally accurate all the way through. So we look at that, and like I said, we plan 6 weeks out. And I think one of the dangers, like when we start adding new songs, and this is a danger of contemporary. And my pastor and I had this conversation a week or so ago. He was telling me about how he grew up with hymns, and he looks at songs now and go, these are songs of my childhood that I grew up with, and that kind of hit home for him. One of the challenges with contemporary music is, I mean, if you've got Spotify, there's a new song coming out every single day. Every single day. And if you're not careful, trying to keep up with the Joneses of trying to do the most hip, new, current song that's out there, man, you can bombard your people with new music that they won't connect in worship. And I think that's a real danger I've seen a lot of people fall into, of just putting new music out over and over to your congregation, and they're not going to go anywhere with you if you're constantly putting new music in front of them. Familiarity is everything. And I know sometimes for a worship team, my team, I have to tell them and remind them all the time, you have sung this song 18 times this week. The congregation has sung it once. I know you're sick of it, but they're not, and you kind of have to find that line of like, what's familiar and when can we add new stuff along the way. But anyway, that's how Tuesdays go. And Tuesdays I use in the afternoon a lot of time. We have a devotional, and just kind of like Paul said, at the end of our rehearsal on Wednesdays, we have a devotional and a prayer time where we get together and talk through. And I use Tuesday afternoons to kind of prep any kind of devotional that I'm going to do with them on a Wednesday evening. But when we come into Wednesdays are our rehearsal days. We rehearse in the evenings from 6:30 to 8. And just like Paul said, I am very particular about, I tell my team, and again, it's a bunch of volunteers. They have worked all day long. They have jobs, they have families, they have kids. I want to respect their time. We are very particular about starting right on time at 6:30 and getting them out. We have a slotted time of 6:30 to 8. My team is typically prepared enough when they come in on a Wednesday night, 6:30 to 7:30, that we can run through music. Because I have a music director on my staff, a lot of times him and I will break it. He'll take the band in the auditorium, and he'll work the band and the music. I'll take the vocalists in the green room in the back. We'll sit at the piano and we'll work out parts and do whatever we need to, and then come back in at the end and kind of put it all together. But we're real respectful about that with their time. We want to respect their time and make sure that they're taken care of. But earlier in the day, we use a lot of Wednesdays. Monday mornings are booked. We have prayer in the mornings, that we have a midweek prayer thing that goes on. But our Wednesday afternoons are booked with, we work on the music from just a musician standpoint. I sit at the keys or guitar or electric, whatever I'm on that week. And I make sure that I know the music well enough that I could talk anybody in the band through any point of the song. I don't ever want to come into, I don't know if you've ever been in those rehearsals where the person who's leading doesn't feel like they have any idea what's going on. It drives me crazy. So when I walk into a rehearsal on a Wednesday night, I want to make sure that I know the music better than anybody else on stage. And I tell that with my music director as well. We want to know the music better than anybody out here, so that we can answer any question about it. We walk them through. So we use Wednesday afternoons to really prep. In that, I prep vocally, I prep musically. And then that's what Wednesday nights look like. So when we get into Thursdays, Thursdays are our, I call it my tying up loose ends days. Because we've had rehearsal, we've worked all the tracks, Ableton, all that. Me and my music director meet first thing in the morning on Thursdays. We talk about how did rehearsal go? Are there tweaks that we need to make? And we talk through, any minor tweaks, whether it's a transition or whatever in the tracks that we need to make. We talk through that and what that might look like. The rest of my Thursdays are usually pretty loose. And I kind of do that on purpose. I try to leave space at the end of the week where I leave. I'll be honest, my first few years in ministry, I did not spend a lot of time playing my instruments. I was working at some smaller churches. So I was worship pastor, I was tech director, I was doing graphics, website, you name it all. So there wasn't a whole lot of extra time to do that. Then the Lord, I guess it was one day I realized, it's okay to work on your craft. It's okay to spend time getting better at your instrument. It's okay to spend time getting better vocally. So I leave space on Thursdays I sit at the piano, I pull up online courses, and I mix up my genres. I do everything from gospel I'll try classical, and I mix up genres and honestly, just to get better at my instrument. If you are skilled at your instrument, you are going to lead better out front. When you feel confident in what you're doing and what you're playing. And so I really took that to heart of just going I want to spend time with my instrument, whether it's guitar that week, whether it's keys, and I really dive into what I'm going to do, and just get better at it. My goal is every week to learn a new skill, a new chord transition, something along the way that maybe I can add into a service at some point. But like I said, I use Thursdays for that. We also use space. We value just writing our own music. And we haven't introduced a lot of our own stuff to our congregation, but I leave space on Thursday when that mode hits, we have space to write and to do that. So our goal is when we leave on a Thursday afternoon, we look at everything from our stage set in the afternoon. We make sure everything is set, pulled. We have a whiteboard in the back where vocalists know where you're going to be on stage. They know what mic they're going to have. We have it all laid out. So when we leave on a Thursday afternoon, I tell my music director, when we leave on Thursday, I want to know that we could have church on Friday if we needed to. Everything's set, everything's ready to go. Also, because I want to leave on the weekend, I want to be with my family and not have to think about what I didn't get done that week. So we bust our tails Monday through Thursday to make sure that everything is fully set. So when we walk in on Sunday morning, my music director and I get there about 6:30 on Sunday morning. Again, make sure everything's powered up and turned on. Our call time is at 7 o'clock and our downbeat's at 7:15. We do a run through with just the band, the vocals, 7:15 to about 7:40. We run through everything really quick. At that point, we do a roundup with our entire team. So production, our senior pastors there, the worship team, everybody, we do a full roundup and we talk through what the service flow is going to be like that morning. Whoever the host is that morning is in that meeting as well. We talk through service flow all the way top to bottom. And then at 8 o'clock, we do a full Q to Q run through. We do lights, production, any kind of video. We run it just like it's a service. And we just make sure that everything is running. And usually on a Sunday morning by 8:30, 8:40, we're usually have everything tied up pretty good at that point. And our first service is at 9 o'clock. But yeah, we like to, 9 to 10:30. Yeah. And so, we just like we're very detailed. And like I said, if you were to look at our planning center service flow, it's very detailed. There's notes, who's going to be where, who's doing what, who's coming in at what time. And it helps keep everybody, we have a pretty large production crew and people who are there, but it's the more detailed you can be with them, it just keeps everybody on track. But yeah, I think that is.
Okay, so, all right. Yes, Ryan.
Yes, this is for both of you. So are y'all able to do hospital visits, mentorship meetings with different folks in your church, like more like the pastoral care? Are you all able to do that week in, week out?
Okay, am I on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I excluded about 80% of my job just now, talking through. And Philip, thank you for so many things that you said. Challenges for us all, certainly for me as well. Um, I visit, I am actually pastor on call this week. So that is of all the pastors, we have about 12 pastors on our team. And so that's about 4 or 5 times a year. I am the front line. So if there is somebody who needs a visit at 12:30 p.m., I'm there in the Houston Medical Center, where I was yesterday afternoon sitting on a bed with one of our members who had an episode. And then I went across the street to Memorial Hermann and I met with one of our members whose dad was having a heart valve replacement. His dad's not a believer. And so Brian and I prayed for his dad's salvation. I am leaving here. I'm going to go meet with a young man who may become someone who will be a part of our team. I meet with people all the time. I text. I am a social media person to a degree, but I try to stay connected with as many people as I can all the time. I am somewhat of a growth nut, so I'm always building bridges and trying to establish a good foundation upon which we can build. Our choir is going to Ireland this summer on a mission trip, and we're taking 70 people. We've gone from 16 to 70. So you do that because you do constant building, constant meetings, lots of cups of coffee, a lot of breakfasts. It's rare that I don't have a breakfast meeting or a lunch meeting sometime during the week. I've got one tomorrow. I've got one maybe Friday. So I'm building bridges all the time. And then we have a lot of meetings. Philip addressed some of the meetings they have. My Mondays and Tuesdays and now Wednesdays have meetings all over the calendar that are administratively part of what we do. So yes, we do. We've got a lot of meetings like that.
Yeah, same. We leave, like I said, my Tuesdays and Thursdays, they tend to be pretty flexible. And I use that there's always a lunch schedule. Usually I have a lunch with somebody on Tuesday and Thursday. And like Paul said, one of the things I learned in the last few years, it's like texting is everything. Like your team, I have a lot of college age people on my team. I text them all the time. If I think about them in the week, I shoot them a text. And it could be for nothing in particular. Like their name pops in my head, I stop and I shoot them a text. And the measure that gets you with them is like everything. They are loyal to you because you check in on them. I have one team member who is her mom and dad have been ill. They've been in upstate New York and she's been out of pocket. And I text her once a week, every other week to say, hey, just want to check on you, praying for you. How's your family? And I'm telling you, the credibility that gets you with your team, just when you think about them and you text them and you stay in communication with them, it'll take you so far of building like loyalty with your team. But I do spend a lot of my Tuesdays and my Thursdays meeting with people, one-on-one coffees. And that's one of the things that I've never really had this until I've been at my current position, but having a music director who's on my staff, he's able to take some of the detail stuff of building Ableton sets, multi-tracks, all that stuff. He kind of takes that off my hands and it allows me to be pastoral a little more.
Good question. Yeah.
So this is actually for both of you as well. I'm sure you both have some phenomenal musicians that can play anything that's in front of them. And but even still, both of you include rehearsals. In your case, you have 2 rehearsals a week. What do you accomplish in those rehearsals? And is it better for them to just be able to walk up on stage and play it? Or what's the goal of the rehearsals?
Oh man, rehearsal. If I could have more rehearsals a week, I would. You just can't have enough time working through nuance. I am a text-driven musician of the church. I'm going to say that again. I'm text-driven. What both Philip and I clearly believe in, it starts with the word. If it's not communicating the word, guys, gals, throw it out now. If it communicates erroneous doctrine, throw it out now. So being text driven is really important. So I hound that with my singers, my choirs, and our musicians, whether they're playing. Even when an accompanist is playing something and she or he interprets it a certain way, rehearsal process enables us to do that and to run through passages. There's a whole lot of laughter in rehearsal. Philip, I'm sure every one of you, I'm sure you all have laughter. You have to laugh at your own mistakes. Many times I do things. My wife sings in our choir, our daughter sings in our choir, and they don't let me go for anything. I get home and I get eviscerated if I do something that I shouldn't have done. So they keep me humble as well. Philip, I'll let you go ahead and answer as well.
Yeah, so our rehearsal, I kind of view our rehearsals as twofold. The first is obviously you want to work through the music, and we do spend, I have no doubt when my musicians walk in on Wednesday, 95% of the time, they know the music well. They could play through it. And you could honestly, if you were just from a musical standpoint, go, we could show up on Sunday and we could do this. Because I'm going to be honest, most of the songs that we play are not that difficult. Like musically, they're not that hard. The part of rehearsal that's really beneficial is when you work through transitions. Like this week, we have baptism. We do baptisms in the middle of worship. And so we have a moment where we break down, we do baptism, and then we come back into a big chorus to celebrate like somebody being baptized. That stuff is like very detailed stuff that we have to work through in rehearsal. But the second, like honestly, twofold part, the second part is it builds community. I have been at places where you just show up on Sunday, the camaraderie with your team, everybody's cordial and everybody's fine. But there's a difference when you've spent time together midweek, you've talked through, people hang around after rehearsal and we'll talk through what's going on in their life. You'll pray together. Man, you worship better together when you do life together. And the team, when there's camaraderie from a Wednesday night rehearsal, man, you see it transfer over to Sunday. Everybody's more engaged on a Sunday. And then honestly, most of my team walks in Sunday after a Wednesday rehearsal, they walk in way more relaxed because they know exactly what's going to happen that week.
But, thank you all so much for coming.